Would you trust your life in the 4 opposable thumbs of a baboon? Well, if you were aboard a train bound for Cape Town in the 1880s, there's a good chance that that was exactly what you were doing. Meet Jack the Signal Man. A baboon responsible for preventing trains from crashing into each other. But who gave him this important job in the first place? Well, it all started with a man named James Jumper Wide. He was a signalman who was famous for jumping between rail cars, until he fell and lost both of his legs. Although he built himself some pegs for legs and a makeshift wheelchair, Jumper thought his career as a signalman was over. Until he stumbled across Jack the Baboon, who had been trained to push an ox cart. After much begging and pleading with the owner, he bought Jack the Baboon and took him home. Jack turned out to be an alcoholic, and refused to do anything unless he was given a few drops of booze. And so, with enough encouragement, Jumper was able to train him to push his wheelchair to work. Don't drink and drive, kids. Jack would watch Jumper hard at work at the levers every single day. Approaching trains would blow a certain number of whistles, which corresponded to the track they wanted to be transferred to. And Jumper would hobble around with great difficulty and set the right levers for the train. And just by observing, Jack was able to learn and memorize these sequences. It didn't take long till Jumper let him try flipping the levers himself, and soon, Jumper had given the monkey full control. But it didn't take long for railway authorities to receive a complaint from a passenger, and after confirming the ridiculousness for themselves, they fired the pair on the spot. Jumper pleaded with authorities to let Jack prove his abilities, and after harassing them for days, they eventually agreed to give him a chance. And Jack's performance left them speechless. In fact, Jack had performed so well that they made him an official employee of the railway, with a salary of 20 cents a day and a half a bottle of beer weekly. I don't know what Jack needed the money for, but he definitely made good use of that alcohol. And after being employed for 9 years in the railway, Jack never made a single mistake, performing his job even better than a human could. He eventually died of tuberculosis in 1890, and his skull resides in Albany Museum to this day.
But memorizing a bunch of lever positions is easy.
Well, why don't we play a memory game then? I'm gonna show you 5 random numbers between 1 and 9, and I'll hide them after a short amount of time, and you need to recall their positions in ascending order. We'll start easy. Ready, set, go. Okay, so get your answers ready now. If it was 2, 3, 6, 8, and 9, then good job. I think most of you got that. Now, let's ramp up the difficulty. Ready, set, go. Yeah, I'm gonna guess none of you got that one. But guess what? Ayumu the chimpanzee did. Ayumu is a part of the eye research project in Kyoto University, and he's really good at this memory test. I mean, look at that speed. Look at that technique. The project was actually started to research Ayumu's mum, Chimpanzee Eye, the first chimp in the world able to represent numbers with Arabic numerals, and she even liked to paint for fun. So naturally, big brain mum birds big brain son. Ayumu answered the memory test correctly with an accuracy of 79% on average, maintaining his accuracy even with shorter test times. This was compared to human subjects on the same test, and, well, this is what their graph looked like. These results made it seem like young chimpanzees have a much better working memory than humans, but some scientists disagreed with this, saying,
"You will have more practice time."
So, in another experiment, the humans were given more time to practice the task first, and after 2,500 trials, they were just able to match Ayumu's accuracy levels. I expected a bit more out of the humans, to be honest. Shouldn't they be way better with numbers than a chimpanzee? Well, speaking of numbers, Clever Hans was a horse from Berlin in the 1900s, who seemingly had the ability to do quick math. His owner would ask him a question, and Clever Hans would answer by tapping his hoof the correct number of times. Seems a bit sus, and the German Board of Education thought so too, because they conducted an official scientific investigation into Hans's abilities. A man named Oscar Funks designed the experiment and hypothesized that Hans's owner was sneakily sending him signals. So he made a random stranger ask the questions instead. But Hans was still able to nail the answers. Perplexed? Funks then used blinders on Hans so he couldn't see the questioner, and his ability to answer the questions plummeted. In some cases, he would even keep tapping his hoof on the ground indefinitely. But why couldn't he answer correctly when he couldn't see the questioner? Funks had an idea. He asked Hans a question that he himself didn't know the answer to, and amazingly, Hans proceeded to do this again. The conclusion Funks came to was that Hans was able to pick up on subtle, involuntary gestures from the questioner when his answer reached the right number. He was so good at detecting these minute postural changes that the questioners themselves were totally unaware that they were doing them. So Hans may not have been a big brain maths genius, but he was a genius at reading people's body language. Something humans themselves are notoriously bad at. Could you imagine Hans as a detective, though? I don't know. I swear. This whole occurrence coined the term the clever Hans effect, where an animal predicts what someone wants them to do without actually understanding their own actions. For this reason, it's important to conduct animal experiments in a double-blind fashion, where nobody knows what the expected results are. Ah, hey Alex. In 1977, animal psychologist Dr. Irene Pepperberg bought an African grey parrot from a pet store. She named him Alex, short for Avian Learning Experiment. And over the next 30 years, she proceeded to make him the smartest animal in the world. Alex had a spoken vocabulary of over 100 words, but instead of just imitating words, he seemed to have an understanding of what they actually meant. He could label objects correctly based on their shape, size, color, or material, and even created his own words, like when he was shown an apple for the first time and called it a banary, combining two words he had already learnt, banana and cherry. Ooh, look at the smart bird brain. Alex also showed genuine anger or surprise when the researchers tried to trick him during tests. If Alex asked for a banana and they gave him a nut instead, he would throw it back. Foolish human. He also got frustrated with his fellow research buddies when they answered wrong. How many blocks are there? 4? The freakiest part was when he looked in the mirror one day and asked,
"What color?"
This was the first instance in history of an animal subject asking a question. That too, an existential one.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
There's plenty of past examples of animals communicating with humans using sign language and whatnot, but not a single one has asked a question. It's always been, give food, give drink, leave me human, and give food. The cutest thing was that every night before Dr. Pepperberg locked the lab up, Alex would say,
"You be good. I love you. See you tomorrow."
And those would be his last words before unexpectedly passing away one night at the age of 31. So far, all of these smart animals have been in some form of captivity, but what about a big brain animal in the wild? In the late 1800s, ships had great difficulty navigating a treacherous stretch of water called Cook's Strait. It was notorious for wrecking ships, and sailors were terrified of passing through. One day, as a ship named the Brindle approached, the crew saw a Risso's dolphin bobbing happily in front of them. And of course, as humans always do, they proceeded to try and kill him. Thankfully, the captain's wife managed to talk them out of it, but to their surprise, despite the threats to his life, the derpy dolphin began to guide the ship safely through the dangerous waters. And from that day onwards, he did the same for every ship passing through. He was given the name Polaris Jack. When he navigated, not a single shipwreck occurred. Sailors would even refuse to enter the strait unless Polaris Jack had appeared to guide them. This continued until 1904, when someone aboard the SS Penguin fired their rifle at the dolphin. Polaris Jack was injured, and he disappeared. The people were devastated, and a law was passed under the Sea Fisheries Act, protecting him from any other attacks on his life. I wouldn't be surprised if he decided to never help out a human again, but on one fateful day, Polaris Jack reappeared. Hey guys. He was a kind-hearted, forgiving creature, ready to help out humans in need again. Except for the SS Penguin, which ended up shipwrecked in the same waters in 1905. And after being a companion to sailors for over 24 years, Polaris Jack was last seen in April of 1912. There were various speculations about his disappearance, but I'd like to think that he found a nice place to retire in after a long, fulfilling life. He seemed like a pretty cool dude and is fondly remembered as a hero to many New Zealanders. It's really amazing how all these animals were so smart, and it's also amazing how I am a dumb doggo. Number 7. Extra limbs. Polymorphia is a rare birth defect in which an affected individual is born with more than the usual amount of limbs. In most cases, the extra limb is usually shrunken or deformed in some way and of not much use. But one case in India showed otherwise. Deepak Paswan was a boy from India with 1 head, 4 arms, and 4 legs. The limbs were relatively fully formed and also appeared fully functional. Imagine the power you would wield with 4 hands. At the foosball table, you'd be undefeatable. Or imagine DDR with 4 legs. In the Hindu religion, gods are often depicted with numerous limbs. So as news spread of the quote-unquote Octo Boy, pilgrims soon traveled from all over India to worship him as an incarnation of their gods. Until scientists figure out that the extra limbs were actually from a parasitic twin that hadn't developed properly in the womb and had somehow fused with him. Turns out he also didn't actually have control over the extra limbs either. They were just kinda glitching every now and then. So to improve Deepak's quality of life, the extra limbs were cut off, and ever since he's been able to live a relatively normal life, much to the dismay of the pilgrims. Number 6. Supermemory. Hyperthermestic syndrome is a condition that allows people to remember abnormally large numbers of life experiences. Sounds like a cheat code to life, right? You'd be the world's most famous walking encyclopedia and win millions of dollars in popular trivia game shows. But in reality, hyperthermesiacs cannot choose what memories are permanently stored in their brains. Information like memorizing schoolwork would be treated as trivial. So unfortunately, they won't be doing well on any tests at school. But what they are great at is remembering that one time they let a big one rip in the school cafeteria. Remembering these highly personal events can often be very embarrassing or traumatic. But could you imagine dating a hyperthermesiac? Hey babe, I'm going to the store to get some milk. Wait! Are you going to leave me like Mark did on the 3rd of January 1984? What, babe, no. How about like Peter did on the 8th of April 1991? No, what are you talking about? Oh, okay then. Don't forget to buy the low-fat milk this time. Oh yeah, sure, honey. Unlike the time you forgot it on the 21st of September 1997, and the 13th of November 1999, and the 16th of June 2002. Oh, he's gonna leave me. So yeah, the vast majority of hyperthermesiacs find it really difficult to sustain long committed relationships, leading to a lack of social connections and loneliness. Number 5. Exoskeleton armor. Fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, also known as Stoneman syndrome, is an extremely rare genetic condition that allows some individuals to rapidly heal themselves when damaged. But there's a catch. Imagine a person suffers a surface injury. Instead of replacing the skin tissue with more skin tissue, the body replaces it with bone instead. This process is called ossification. Can you imagine what would happen if you injured all your skin? You'd form an exoskeleton-like layer of armor made of pure bone, and literally be a superhuman. But in depressing reality, this disorder is almost 100% fatal. The issue is that the body ossifies all damaged tissue, which can make joints stiff and be dangerous to internal organs. You injure your knee, ossified. I can't walk. You injure your eyelid, ossified. I can't see. You injure your dick. Well, I guess that's a real boner now. any tiny injury would potentially become devastating to you. If you strain your voice, you could permanently lose it. If you damage your airways, bony growth would restrict your breathing. Even if you don't injure yourself, your body is constantly breaking down and repairing itself. So you're basically doomed. You'd be slowly and inevitably turning into a bone statue. But the absolute worst part is there's almost no way this can be medically solved at the moment, as surgical removal of ossified tissue causes the body to repair the area with additional bone, leading to a fatal catch-22. It's a disorder that could in theory be an awesome superpower, but in reality, it's much more like a living nightmare. Number 4. Impervious to pain. Congenital insensitivity to pain, or CIP, is a rare condition where an individual cannot feel pain. Dude, are you okay? Huh? What do you mean? An estimated 1 in every 25,000 people are diagnosed with this condition, and in most cases, the person has actually never experienced pain before. This condition is caused by a mutation to the PRDM12 gene, which is important for the development of pain-sensing nerve cells. Affected individuals have been recorded to register touch, but the pain circuitry is completely cut off. Interestingly, CIP individuals are still susceptible to emotional pain. Physical and emotional pain are both processed by the same part of your brain, so this was surprising to me. But it's more of an issue with the physical sensory input as opposed to pain processing in the brain. This would be a pretty neat power to have for a super soldier though. Someone you could just throw into the middle of the battlefield who doesn't care if they get shot. There's actually a village in northern Sweden called Vitangi, where there's an abnormally high frequency of individuals with CIP. We might need to watch out for them in the near future. In reality, this condition is extremely dangerous to the affected individual, because pain is vital for survival. Individuals with CIP often die during childhood, because fatal injuries just go unnoticed. It is tragically very common for people to burn to death without even knowing. Number 3. Indestructible bones. Trichodento-osseous syndrome is a rare condition affecting no more than a couple thousand people worldwide. It leads to people having bones that are so dense that they've been known to break baseball bats and even withstand car crashes. A mutation in the DLX3 gene causes bone density in the affected individual to increase significantly. It reminds me a lot of Wolverine's skeleton, like if you combine this disorder with the regeneration from Stoneman syndrome, minus the ossification and increased likelihood of death, you're basically Wolverine. However, there are several major drawbacks. These individuals are cursed with having extremely weak teeth that break easily and painfully, or end up falling out completely in some cases. They have brittle nails and dry, curly, and flaky hair as well. Research into TDO is prevalent right now, as it may hold the key to curing osteoporosis, which is the gradual weakening of skeletal structures many people develop in their old age. This would make a huge difference in improving their quality of life, as breaking bones from bad falls is incredibly common for elderly and in many cases life-threatening. Number 2. Super strength. Myostatin-related muscle hypertrophy is a rare condition that literally gives you super strength. Affected individuals have over twice the usual muscle mass of an average human, and they also have increased muscular strength, all without going to the gym or lifting weights to maintain it. Imagine waking up and just being jacked. This condition is caused by a mutation in the MSTN gene, which is usually responsible for limiting muscle growth to prevent us from growing too large. But in these super strength individuals, it doesn't work as a limiter. A real-life case of this is Liam Hoekstra from the United States. Doctors recorded that he had prominent muscle development in his legs as an infant. Like bro came out of the womb jacked. Yeah, he never skipped leg day in there. Bro could do a pull-up at 8 months old, had a six-pack when he was just 3 years old, and could lift 3-kilogram dumbbells with his arms fully extended at just 3 years old as well. Do you understand how crazy that is? Bro probably only weighed 3 kgs at the time. To add icing on the cake, there are no known medical complications to this condition. All those benefits and not a single drawback has been found? That is just plain unfair. And that's why it gets the number 2 spot on this list. Number 1. Fearlessness. Geordie Cernick is a man from the UK who was diagnosed with Cushing's syndrome, where his body produced too much cortisol, which caused him to have severe, life-threatening weight gain and high blood pressure. After numerous brain surgeries and complications, in a final surgical operation, his adrenal glands were removed from his body. This gruesome operation required removing one of his ribs, and it was extremely painful. Thankfully, his Cushing's syndrome was cured as a result, but it came with a price. When Geordie woke up in the hospital bed, he was on life support. He had numerous tubes coming out of him, and the doctors solemnly told him that there had been complications. He had developed pneumonia and then meningitis, which is a potentially fatal infection of the brain. But surprisingly, upon receiving the bad news, Geordie had no response. He didn't feel anything. Among the many functions of the adrenal glands, one of them is influencing your body's stress response, also known as fight or flight, namely through the hormone adrenaline. Turns out, due to the removal of his adrenal glands, the part of Geordie's brain that controlled fear had been turned off. So now he lives a life of zero fear. Can you imagine that? Not feeling the nervous pit in your stomach before an important test? Or not feeling shy and flustered when asking a girl out? Not having a second thought when taking a risk? You'd be an absolute Giga Chad! Especially when cases of anxiety and paranoia are increasing in our society right now. Fearlessness would drastically change the course of your life. But just like many of the other disorders on this list, there's a catch. Fear is a fundamental survival instinct, and the absence of it could be very dangerous. But even worse than that, Geordie lost something much more important after his surgery. He lost the ability to feel excited for things, to feel suspense, and in some cases, even joy. It took away his ability to experience life. Do you think we all experience emotions in the same way? In 1924, Connie Landis designed a sick little experiment to find out just that. He wanted to see if emotions triggered the same facial expressions in people. So he sat the participants in front of a camera and subjected them to various stimuli, looking for similarities in their reactions. He started off mellow, playing some jazz music and making them smell ammonia. But the results weren't exciting enough for Landis, so he raised the stakes. He began showing them gruesome photos of horrendous skin conditions, and even unexpectedly lit a firecracker under their chair. But still, Landis was looking for something more. They weren't extreme enough, and that's when things took a dark turn. He ordered the participants to close their eyes and dip their hand into a mysterious bucket, only for them to realize it was filled with live, slimy frogs. He coaxed them into rummaging all the way to the bottom until he had rigged it to deliver a painful electric shock. But the worst was yet to come. He handed the participant a live mouse in one hand and a razor-sharp knife in the other, and calmly asked them to behead the mouse. If they didn't comply, he warned that he would do it for them. The participants had mixed reactions. Some burst into tears, others were frozen in fear, and a few even started laughing. One was a 13-year-old boy who was ruthlessly photographed distressed and on the verge of a mental breakdown. Embarrassingly, after all this depravity, he found that there was no typical facial expressions for any of the emotions aroused during this experiment. Everyone reacted differently. However, one of the most common reactions to these unpleasant experiences was smiling. Although this experiment was a total failure at face value, future researchers did find something unsettling. Despite their protests, after being ordered to behead the mouse, 2/3 of the participants actually went through with it. How could a person be so easily convinced to commit such a horrible action against their moral and ethical judgments? That's actually a grim theme we'll see more of later on in this video. But first, you are probably in a creepy psychology experiment right now. Just like Facebook's emotion manipulation experiment in 2014, where they secretly manipulated the moods of almost 700,000 people without their consent. They did this by tampering with people's feeds, showing mainly negative content to one group and mainly positive content to the other. After a week, the words used in users' posts were analyzed, and the results were pretty obvious. The negative content group posted more negative thoughts, and the positive content group more positive thoughts. Basically, Facebook purposely made people depressed without them knowing, for science. Imagine if someone was already dealing with mental health problems, and then this non-consensual experiment pushed them over the edge. Technically, this study was also completely legal as well. Facebook's data policy states that the information they collect may be used for research. But I didn't realize I signed up for that. Well, they could probably write, "Your life now belongs to Zuck," and we would still tick the box anyway. To this day, Facebook still has major issues with hateful content and fear-inducing misinformation. And from this unethical experiment, the Zuck scientists are clearly aware of the harmful effects these posts have on their users, and yet they still allow negativity to spread without strict regulations. But that's the thing. Most social media research points to negative posts garnering more engagement. And more engagement means more money. What, you think the green in his eyes is because he's a lizard? Maybe even this video you're watching right now is part of YouTube's experiment. You've been selected for the positive content group. Now, since you're such a positive person, would you help someone if they collapsed next to you? How about if you were in a group of 5 people? Well then, how about if you're in a crowd of 30? In 1964 New York, Kitty Genovese was murdered in broad daylight, a couple steps away from her house. Newspapers reported that 37 people witnessed the attack, and yet no one bothered to help her. Why? This event coined the term the bystander effect, where it was hypothesized that people were less likely to provide assistance if they were one among a crowd. To test this theory, the smoky room experiment was devised. A participant was sat in a room alone and given a fake survey to fill, during which the room would then be pumped with harmless smoke. The researchers would record if the participant reported the smoke or not, and it was repeated with varying group sizes consisting of paid actors. The results? When alone, 75% of the participants reported the smoke. When 3 participants were together, 38% reported it. And when there was 1 participant and 2 actors, only a shocking 10% of participants reported it. Circling back to the Kitty Genovese case, could this explain why none of the witnesses did anything to help? Well, actually, not really. Multiple people did in fact call for help. But in a twist, the New York Police Department tried to cover up their slow response time to the scene by giving the media a fake news story, blaming the bystanders for the incident instead. But there is still some element of truth to the bystander effect, which has been proven over multiple other studies as well. People seem to be more concerned with fitting in instead of their own safety or the safety of others. So, the next time you're in trouble in a public place, help me, please. Good luck. Speaking of murder, if I asked you to kill someone, would you do it?
How about now?
Well, that's kinda like an experiment that was conducted at Yale University by Stanley Milgram in 1961. He had always wondered how people could commit such atrocities during the Holocaust. Did they have no conscience? Or were they just following the orders of an authority figure? Milgram designed an experiment to explore this behavior. There were 2 participants. One acted as the teacher and the other as a student, who was strapped to an electric chair. They were split into separate rooms so they couldn't see each other. The teacher would then begin to quiz the student, and if the student made a mistake, the teacher was told to activate the electric chair. Sounds pretty extreme already, doesn't it? What's 1 plus 1? 3? Every time the student answered wrong, the teacher would increase the shock intensity, and the researchers would reassure that the shocks weren't lethal. Well then, what's 1 plus 4? 3? Eventually, the shock intensity would get so high that the student would start banging on the wall and crying out in pain. Even if the teacher wanted to stop, the researcher would insist that they continue. The teacher would eventually reach the highest setting, which had a clear warning sign. But after delivering the maximum shock, there was no response from the student. The participant had delivered a voltage high enough to kill. Can you imagine signing up to what you thought would be a fun, interesting study and walking out thinking that you just murdered someone? But that's the catch. The student who was being shocked was actually a paid actor, faking their sounds of distress using a recording. The real experiment was seeing how far participants would go in harming someone under the influence of an authority figure. And disturbingly, 65% of the participants delivered the maximum voltage of 450 volts, with the others delivering at least 300 volts. More than enough to kill in this case. The results prove something quite dark about humans. Despite hearing the cries of pain, the participants continued to torture the students, telling themselves they were just following orders. So, who's the real monster in this scenario? The authority figure or the participant? Well, it's actually this next guy. Dr. Wendell Johnson was a speech pathologist who wanted to find out why some children develop stutters. He himself had developed a stutter at an early age, with no cure found. He hypothesized that stuttering was a learned behavior. That is, if a child was told that they were stuttering, they would continue to do so. He devised an experiment to prove this, the monster study. He took 22 children and split them into 2 groups, randomly labeling them as normal speakers and stutterers. The normal speakers would receive praise for their ability to speak well, but those in the stutterers group were gaslit into thinking they were stuttering, even if they could speak well normally. This continued for 6 months. So what happened? At the end of the experiment, there was no significant change seen in the normal speakers group, but what happened to the stutterer group was much darker. A majority of the children became withdrawn and self-conscious, with many even ending close friendships out of fear of speaking. In his pursuit to find the cure to stuttering, Johnson ended up creating more speech problems for the children, and many retained these issues for the rest of their lives. It was called the Monster Study because the kids were orphans and were as young as 5 years old at the time. Johnson had ruthlessly used them as lab rats and destroyed their ability to speak. It was only a whole 60 years later that the victims were made aware that their speech trauma was the result of this study. None of them had provided consent. Imagine having your whole life ruined before it had really even started. Well, little Albert has some experience with that. How far would you go in the pursuit of scientific knowledge? Would you traumatize a baby? I know you would. In 1920, popular behavioral scientist John Watson conducted research into the development of phobias and wanted to prove that emotional reactions could be conditioned in people. So he decided to start with a blank slate, a 9-month-old baby, fresh out the womb and into the guinea pig cage. Meet little Albert. So here's how the study was conducted. Albie was first exposed to a bunch of stimuli, ranging from a monkey, to a burning newspaper, to a white rat. And he initially showed no fear to any of these. However, the next time Albie was exposed to the white rat, Watson took a hammer out and smacked it against a metal pipe, right into the baby's ears. After sadistically repeating this multiple times, Albert eventually began to cry just by seeing the rat. In Watson's own words, he began to crawl away so rapidly that he was caught with difficulty before reaching the edge of the table. Albie was ready to end it all after seeing that rat. Watson was probably happy about the result though, seeing as it provided evidence for his hypothesis. But as it turns out, Albie wasn't just scared of white rats now. He began to generalize his phobia, so that he developed a fear of anything white and fluffy. Albie, no, I'm just a dumb doggo, come back! Here's how you can become a real cyborg right now. Step 1, have a body made of flesh and blood. Step 2, put the body through
Terrible accident.
Wait. Step 3, get smart engineers to experiment on you for research purposes. But you're still stuck on step 2 right now. So how about we take a look at some real-life examples of cybernetic upgrades you can get? Great! We've got sense augmentation, telepathic communication, and finally, bionic limbification. Let's start at the top. Bionic eyes.
Hostile detected.
In 1978, engineer William Dobell tried to create artificial vision. He found that when you electrically stimulate the visual cortex, a splotch of light called a phosphene is perceived. He then stabbed a bunch of little electrodes in and mapped video camera footage to them, creating a dot matrix of phosphenes. So now someone wearing the device could see the outline of shapes. One of his blind patients even regained enough vision to drive a car. I can finally see now! His work was showing signs of truly helping people. And then he died. And everyone realized that he barely documented anything. All that research straight down the toilet. But since then, there have been many advances in bionic eye technology. Devices like the Argus 2 now allow you to read large text. Buscri? Imagine if you could record and replay memories, or you could even stream other people's camera feeds and relive them for yourself. Maybe you could even zoom in. And enhance. One day, I could even hack into your eyes and play doggo videos directly into your brain. Well anyways, congratulations on your new bionic eyes. But did you know people nowadays are experimenting with non-human senses as well? Magnetic sense. This one's a weird modification, but you need all the help you can get, my friend. So you get a professional to cut your finger open and stick a itty-bitty magnet inside. Now it wiggles whenever you're near a magnetic field. Whoa. Seems a bit gimmicky, but it could be useful for an electrician. You could sense the shape and intensity of magnetic fields and even distinguish between AC and DC voltages. But there would be so many disadvantages. Like, how would you get an MRI done? Have you seen how strong their magnets are? So we need to scan you for cancer. Sir? Or even worse, it just rips out of your skin. You couldn't get past airport security either. But at least you can pick up paper clips with your finger. But your implant would demagnetize over time, so eventually you're just left with a piece of trash. And a demagnetized magnet. Looks good on you though, just don't get too close to that machine. Color sense. Neil Harbison was born with a rare form of complete colorblindness, and at the age of 22, he turned into the world's first Pikmin. He has a cyborg antenna implanted into his skull, with a camera on one end and a sound vibration implant on the other. Now, he can hear colors through audible vibrations based on what the camera is seeing. The cool part is that he can see infrared and ultraviolet light too. Today's a sunscreen kind of day. But turns out, having your brain constantly vibrating isn't fun. Make it stop, please. But the human brain is plastic. Not literally made of plastic, but able to adapt and learn. So even though there was this new sense forcing its way in, Neil's brain eventually accepted it. Just like how our brains aren't overwhelmed by our eyes constantly seeing and our ears constantly hearing. I'll give you this antenna. Doesn't really do anything, but it's cute. Cyborg Sense Speed Round. North Sense is a little chest implant that jiggles every time you face north. Centero is a proximity sensor that jiggles when you're next to another Centero user. Seismic Sense is an implant that jiggles when the Earth jiggles. These cyborgs sure do a lot of jiggling, don't they? I guess we should sort that out now, huh? Telepathic communication. Humans communicate like this. But imagine if you could talk like this instead. Well, to do this, you'd need to read information from one brain and write it to other brains or computers. Neuralink is already working on this with their brain-computer implant, and they've recently completed their first human trial. The patient was paralyzed from the shoulders down after an accident, and now he can use his mind to play RuneScape. The chip has a bunch of electrode threads which can read different signals from your brain. Their software then maps these signals to cursor movements on a screen. And you could use this technology to map a brain to any computer interface, like a Jaeger. With this implant, you can now control this Roomba. Here you go, buddy. Right now, brain-to-brain communication is pretty difficult, because seizures. But a simpler option would be to read a message from one brain and use a computer to transmit it to an ear implant. You could basically have your own private radio channels in your head. Reading information from brains could be a bit scary though. I don't want people to know my intrusive thoughts. Neil the Pikmin and his jiggly cyborg buddy achieved a different form of cyborg communication with Bluetooth. And I mean a literal Bluetooth. When they were in close range, they could communicate in Morse code by tapping their teeth. What happens when they're eating though? How could you say that? Anyways, that's communication sorted. Wait, where'd he go? I guess it's time to get you some real legs now. Bionic limbs. At the age of 17, rock climber Hugh Herr had both his legs amputated due to frostbite. Doctors told him he would never climb again, but instead of giving up, he turned his clunky prosthetic legs into ones that could outperform real human limbs. Spiked feet for climbing vertical ice walls, extendable legs for reaching far footholds, and narrow-tipped feet that could slip into cracks way too thin for regular feet. His legs also didn't get tired while climbing anymore, because he didn't have any. Now, he finds himself as the director of biomechatronics at MIT, where he designed special brain-controlled bionic legs. Microprocessors constantly adjust the stiffness of his joints to mimic how humans naturally walk. Like, look at how smoothly he moves. He hopes to end disability in humans one day, but there's a few major problems to solve first. One is that it's really hard to interface with human skin. It's hairy, oily, sweaty, and it chafes and cuts easily. You can't just duct tape a prosthetic on and call it a day. Hugh's research is developing synthetic skin to tackle this problem. It can change its shape and stiffness under electrostatic forces. Kinda like how the glider cape from The Dark Knight turns from floppy to stiff when you run a current through it. So the synthetic skin is soft and stretchy on your squishy parts and stiffer where there's solid bone surface underneath. Sounds pretty comfy. But a gross problem that's often overlooked is sweat. Since prosthetics basically surround amputated limbs like a shoe, sweat doesn't evaporate, so some sports prosthetics include drain holes. Another interfacing option is osseointegration, which involves implanting titanium directly into the bone, and then you can swap out whatever attachment you want. But the biggest problem is that bionic limbs don't really feel like they're a part of you. Humans have a sense called proprioception, which is basically your body's spatial awareness. For example, if you close your eyes, you're still able to touch the tip of your nose with your finger. The same can't be said for bionic limbs just yet. But research is currently being done to solve this, and soon you could pick any bionic limb you want, and it would feel like a part of you. Bionic Limb Speed Round. Jason Barnes is a drummer with a bionic arm attachment with 2 drumsticks, allowing him to play rhythms no other human can play. Jesse Sullivan is one of the world's first cyborgs who had a bionic arm that could be controlled through nerve grafts in his chest. This dude stuck a USB in his finger. And there's a company called Psionic that makes prosthetic arms that can punch through things. And now, with a few little adjustments, all finished. You look great! Ah, you're welcome.
Did you know you can't just dig up your great-great-great-great-grandma and call her a fossil? You're only a fossil if you're from a past geological age. So, your remains need to remain for thousands or even millions of years. But there's more than one way to become a fossil, and I've got 7 for you to try right now. Number 1, permineralization. This is the most common type. and almost all dinosaur fossils you see at the museum have formed through this process. But if you want to become a fossil, first you'll need to become a corpse. In most cases, scavengers will find and pick you apart, so for protection, you'll need a rapid burial. Being buried also cuts off the oxygen, which bacteria need to decompose you. Low oxygen equals low decay, which preserves you for longer. Over time, your soft tissues will usually still decay, but solid parts like your bones and teeth remain, ready for
Begin.
It actually starts in the sky. Rain is usually slightly acidic, and when it seeps into the ground, it dissolves minerals like silica from the soil. The silica-rich groundwater eventually reaches your remains and enters the pores of your bones, where the silica precipitates on all surfaces, inside and out, coating them with a fresh layer of mineral paint. Over hundreds of thousands of years, this forms a protective layer of stone around the bone, creating a permineralized fossil. But in another process called mineral replacement, the silica can replace the original bone minerals themselves. If all the bone minerals are swapped out, it becomes a petrified fossil, essentially meaning it's completely turned to stone. Apart from petrified dinosaur bones, you can find petrified shells, wood, or even poop. I don't know about that one. And it's not just silica. These processes can happen with other minerals too. Like, here's a cool rock I have with glow-in-the-dark fossils in it. And there's also pyrite ones that form shiny metallic-looking fossils. A little to the right. Ooh, a bit to the left. All right, bring it down, boys. Time to find more exhibits. Number 2, amber. In a coniferous forest 140 million years ago, a bug-sized human is busy chewing through a poor tree when suddenly a sticky orange goo oozes out. This is resin, the tree's active defense, and it's used to seal wounds to protect against further damage or infection. Eventually, the resin fully engulfs you, forming a nice airtight seal. And as a bonus, it also contains toxic terpene molecules, which act like a natural bug spray. So even if you don't suffocate to death, you're dead either way. Blech. Over the following days, the resin hardens via a process called polymerization, becoming a semi-solid substance known as copal. If left above the surface, it eventually degrades and decomposes. But luckily in this case, the hardening has caused it to break off and fall to the forest floor, to be slowly buried over the next thousands of years. In the absence of UV light and oxygen, the copal is able to harden completely over time, eventually turning into amber, which is a tough material that resists decay, perfectly preserving whatever was trapped inside. Amber fossils usually contain tiny bugs like ants and flies. My favorite one is the spider frozen in time attacking a wasp, roughly 100 million years ago. Now, all that's left to do is excavate the amber, polish it up, and then... Wow! Look at that! A perfect specimen! Number 3, carbonization. We'll need you to be a plant for this one. So one day you're just chilling, doing whatever plants do, when... boom, mudslide kills you. You've been rapidly buried and the oxygen is cut off. Perfect conditions for fossilization. Over the years, more sediment piles on top, eventually burying you 3 kilometers underground. You'd be experiencing 800 times atmospheric pressure here. That's like... The heat and pressure squeeze out all compounds containing hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, which have weaker bonds and lower boiling points. What's left is stable and strong carbon, so your remains are preserved as a thin black film, basically a 2D silhouette. Because this method works best on squishy organisms, you usually find plants and soft-bodied animals like bugs and jellyfish as carbonized fossils. I like this bee one. Bzz. When layers and layers of carbonized fossils are packed together, they eventually form coal, which is why it's known as a fossil fuel. Let me fix that for you. Number 4. Tar pits. Tar pits are natural pools of a sticky black substance called asphalt, created when blobs of crude oil make their way to the surface from underground, forming a goo death trap. Over time, dust, leaves, and sticks fall onto the surface, making it look solid. But as soon as you step on it, you sink. Struggling only makes it worse, soon leading to exhaustion, and then you die. Blech. Gradually, your soft tissues decay, but your bones, which are more resistant, sink further in. All the while, fresh oil is still seeping upwards from underground, burying your bones even faster. Being encased in asphalt is the perfect environment for preservation. It blocks oxygen and is also toxic to many microbes, preserving your bones almost exactly as they were. But because tar pits are constantly moving, you get jumbled up a bit. So when you're eventually excavated, all the paleontologist bros will have to think really hard to put you back together. Dude, is this his butt? A super cool fact is that tar pits are great for finding fossils of predators. The story goes like this. Unfortunate prey animal gets stuck in pit. Hungry predator sees you and goes, "Ooh, yummy snack." Then another predator comes along and is like, "Ooh, yummy snack." And so on and so forth. Famous tar pit predators include dire wolves, American lions, and even saber-toothed tigers. Sometimes they're even found fossilized mid-attack. Pretty cool stuff. Is that his butt? Number 5, molds and casts. So you're scuttling along the ocean floor when you suddenly realize that you're a human and not a fish. Blech. Over time, your body is buried in ocean sediments, eventually compacting and hardening into rock. This fossilization technique is a bit weird, because your body actually completely decays and disappears in this one. But something does remain. When your body was buried, it left an imprint in the sediment, capturing all your delicate features. This empty space is called a mold, and it's a negative of your body. If we fill this mold with some jelly, we could create a squishy replica of you. That's pretty good. But this process can happen naturally too. Your mold can be filled with minerals, creating a cast fossil. Oh, this is pretty good too. Okay, but realistically, this method wouldn't work well for preserving humans, because there's too much soft tissue. Instead, it's great for animals with shells and exoskeletons, like trilobites, crab, and this ancient giant millipede called Arthropleura, which is estimated to be 2.6 meters long. It's kind of comfy in here. Number 6, freezing. So right now we're in the Ice Age, and you've decided to take a nice relaxing stroll in this blizzard. So, you fall into a crevice, you die on impact, and are rapidly buried in freezing ice. The low temperatures slow your rate of decay, and the water inside your cells freezes, locking in their structure. Over decades or even centuries, more soil and material freezes around you, forming permafrost, which is ground that has remained frozen for at least 2 years. This is important because any temperature changes can cause your body to thaw, restarting decay. So, after this, you're almost perfectly physically preserved. DNA, soft tissues, and even facial expressions are intact. We've found many amazing ice fossils, like woolly mammoths and rhinos and stuff. But the most famous is Otzi the Iceman, a 5,300-year-old fossil who now sits comfortably in a custom-designed cold cell in Italy. Ooh, one more slot left. Number 7, mummification. In the dry, arid deserts of the Sahara, a lone wanderer takes his last breath. Bleh. As the howling wind blows, it carries scorching sand over your deceased body. Okay, I'm done. This rapidly buries and hides you from scavengers. The heat from the sweltering sun evaporates all the water from your body, and now you're a dusty, crusty husk. This is mummification, or in scientific speak, desiccation. And it's what happens when an organism is dried so quickly and completely that very little decay occurs. Bacteria rely on water for metabolism, so no water equals no decay, meaning your husk lives on. Mummification can preserve hair, skin, internal organs, and even DNA for thousands of years. Salt helps a lot too. It draws out water rapidly, dehydrating tissues. And this is what the ancient Egyptians used to preserve their mummies. Ah yes, With this crusty addition, my collection is finally complete! Anyways, I'll see y'all in a million years.
1,000,000 years later.
Humans have adapted to the most extreme environments on Earth over thousands of generations. And then there's you. Me? And your only adaptation is this pudgy tubby. Let's see how you compare against real superhumans from extreme environments. Number 7. Superhumans of the Deep Sea. First, we're heading to the islands of Southeast Asia. And remember, the deep sea is very dangerous for regular people like you. Let's see how long you last. The moment your face hits the cold water, your diving reflex kicks in. Your heart rate slows by up to 25% to save energy. Your blood vessels constrict, redirecting blood to vital organs, and your spleen acts as a biological scuba tank, pumping extra oxygen-rich blood cells into your bloodstream. But despite all these amazing adaptations, you're dead. 2 minutes. Not bad, but not even close to the superhumans of the sea, the Summer Bajau people, who are the closest we have to Aquaman. They live a hunter-gatherer lifestyle and have been reported to be able to hold their breath underwater for over 10 minutes at a time, spending a total of almost 8 hours a day submerged underwater. They have extremely low body fat, making them negatively buoyant, allowing them to run effortlessly across the seabed to hunt fish. You, on the other hand, are extremely positively buoyant. As you go deeper underwater, pressure increases significantly, and diving deep too quickly can cause your eardrums to tear. Regular divers prevent this by gently blowing through their ears to equalize pressure, but the Summer Bajau say, who needs eardrums? They purposely obliterate their eardrums at a young age, so they basically have no ear pressure problems. Only ear hearing problems. When you're underwater for too long, carbon dioxide levels in your blood begin to rise. This triggers the body's panic reflex, causing you to take a fresh breath of water. The Summer Bajau, however, have a gene mutation that suppresses this reflex, allowing them to stay calm underwater for longer. Other genetic mutations they have include a gene which provides increased constriction of their blood vessels, and one which gives them a spleen that's 50% larger than regular humans. Anyways, let's get out of here, because we got 6 more superhumans to learn about. Now, where were we? Number 6. Superhumans of the jungle. Welcome to the African rainforest in the Congo Basin, where everything wants to either bite you, sting you, infect you, or eat you. The thick rainforest canopy above blocks most sunlight, making it incredibly easy to get lost. The air is hot and very humid, to the point where your sweat can't even evaporate to cool you down. So instead, you continue to heat up, causing you to sweat some more, heat up, sweat, die of dehydration. But don't worry, the superhumans of the rainforest are here to save the day. Standing at a mighty 4 feet and 11 inches tall, the African pygmies make their small stature their superpower. Being this small allows the pygmies to generate less heat and sweat, reducing the chance of dehydration, while also making it easier to navigate the dense undergrowth. In an environment where food is scarce, a compact body requires less resources to survive. But sometimes the pygmies stumble upon the ultimate jackpot, a beehive filled with delicious honey. But there's a catch. It's 40 meters up a tree. Armed with nothing but an axe and a loop of tree vine, the pygmies fearlessly scale the tree, hacking footholds in as they go. And after battling a bunch of bees, they finally secure the goods.
Food, finally.
On to the next location.
No, wait.
Oh yeah, and like the video, it's for... Number 5, Superhumans of the Ice. We're zooming all the way out to the Arctic, where the warmest days are 10 degrees Celsius and the coldest days are minus 40 degrees Celsius. When your body temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius, you start to experience hypothermia. First comes the shivering, and your blood vessels constrict to keep vital organs warm. But this causes your extremities to become too cold, making them freeze and die due to frostbite. At this point, your brain has probably started to fail too, causing confusion, memory loss, and maybe even some fun hallucinations. Some people get so delirious that they actually strip naked, which sure helps them keep warm. That's where the superhumans of the ice come in, the Inuit people. Their short, stocky build minimizes surface area, helping them retain more heat. They also have more blood rushing through their fingers and toes, reducing the chance of frostbite freezing them off. By consuming fatty meat from seals and fish, they build up an insulating layer of fat. But while most people primarily have white fat, the Inuit people have an abundance of brown fat, which is packed with specialized mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, turning them into a human furnace. Because of all these adaptations, the Inuit people can maintain a metabolic rate of up to 200% higher than an average person, meaning they're able to maintain a toasty core temperature without even needing to shiver. But don't worry, the next location will definitely warm you up. Number 4. Superhumans of the desert. Now we're on the opposite side of the temperature spectrum, the scorching hot African desert, and you're giving us a lovely demonstration of hyperthermia in action. First comes the heat exhaustion, heavy sweating, rapid breathing, and your pulse racing. Your blood vessels also dilate, trying desperately to dump heat through your skin. But eventually you progress to heat stroke, where you become so dehydrated that you stop sweating entirely. Your organs start to fail, and your brain starts shutting down, leading to confusion, aggression, seizures, and finally, unconsciousness before you die. But these extreme conditions are no problem for the superhumans of the desert. The Maasai tribe. They average around 6 feet tall and have longer, skinnier limbs that help with better heat dissipation through more surface area. They also have a crazy diet of raw meat, raw milk, and raw blood from cows, which helps them maintain their extremely low body fat and naturally lower body temperature, and their dark skin provides stronger protection against sunburn. All of these adaptations help them sweat and pee less than normal people to conserve water. And one more superpower is that these guys can jump super high. Looking a bit thirsty there, aren't you? Well, let's get you something to drink. Number 3. Superhumans of poison. Next, we find ourselves in the Andes Mountains at Uru Uru Lake in Bolivia, which is known for being full of toxic arsenic. Arsenic naturally occurs in volcanic rock, but rain and mining operations release significant amounts of it into the surrounding rivers and lakes. And now, that toxic arsenic is in you. First, your body tries to get rid of the toxins through both exits. Then comes the numbness, abdominal pain, and muscle cramps. With long-term exposure, your skin color changes, and lesions start popping up on your skin. You start developing hard patches in your palms and the soles of your feet, and not to mention the increased risk of cancer, diabetes, and heart problems too. So why isn't she dying yet? Well, that's because over thousands of years, the Uru people have developed the genetic cheat code for poison resistance. The AS3MT gene helps detoxify arsenic, allowing the Uru people to pee it out faster. So it spends less time in their body, meaning less harmful effects on their health. But rising pollution levels, frequent drying up of the lakes, and long-term exposure to arsenic have unfortunately forced many Uru people to abandon their homes in recent times. But I hope you're all hydrated now, because we're off to even higher mountains. Number 2. Superhumans of the mountains. We're at Mount Everest Base Camp, 5,000 meters above sea level. Well, I guess that makes sense, because at elevations of just 2,500 meters, many people start experiencing altitude sickness. The air up here is thin, and has way less oxygen than your body is used to, which leads to headaches, dizziness, and vomiting. And in extreme cases, fluid can build up in your lungs and brain, causing shortness of breath, severe confusion, and even death. Even being physically fit won't save you up here. Not that that's relevant in your case, but there have been instances where highly trained mountaineers have died from altitude sickness. The real superhumans are the ones that accompany these mountaineers, the Sherpa. They're able to pull in more oxygen than the average person due to their naturally larger lung capacity and faster breathing. A gene mutation also allows them to use this oxygen more efficiently, giving them superior stamina. It's for these reasons that the Sherpas are a necessity for people looking to summit Mount Everest. They lead the climbs, carry heavy loads, and provide first aid, all while your sorry butt is struggling to survive. But we made it though. Wow, look at that view. That's where we're going next. Number 1. Superhumans of space. Our final destination, the International Space Station. In this zero-gravity environment, there's no load being placed on your body, so it says, hey, I don't really need me anymore, do I? And then it proceeds to turn your muscles to jelly and weaken your bones. Zero gravity changes your blood distribution too, giving you a balloon head and chicken legs. Even with our fancy space station shielding, you're getting bombarded with over 50 times the radiation than on Earth. And because microgravity messes up how your digestive system works, a lot more too. Ugh. Right now, there are no superhumans that have genetically adapted to life in space, but rather than waiting for natural selection to take its course over thousands of years, let's borrow from all the superhumans we've met so far. In you go. First, we'll add a Sherpa in for genes for better oxygen efficiency, and a Summer Bajau in for superior breath-holding abilities. From the Maasai tribe, we'll grab the genes that help conserve water, but not the height genes. Can you sit down? Instead, we'll take the Pygmies' compact and lightweight build, as it requires less resources to sustain and also saves on rocket fuel. We can't forget the mutations from this video, the DLX3 gene for indestructible bones, and the MSTN gene for super strength and muscle preservation. And for radiation resistance, there's research which shows that extra P53 genes help to repair and protect DNA from damage. And lastly, why not throw in some plant DNA too, to allow you to create food via photosynthesis. Back to space. Wakey, wakey. How you doing?
I feel powerful, Doggo.
Oh yeah, I didn't fix your flatulence.
I see. Thank you, Doggo.
I was in the museum the other day looking at all these cool rock formations on display. You know, there were spiky rocks and goopy rocks, but when I made it all the way to the bottom, what I saw didn't make any sense. It was a rock, but it was like someone had created perfectly machined metallic cubes and fused them into it. Now, this was strange because this was supposed to be a natural formations display, and these cubes were obviously human-made. Am I the only one who thinks that? Like, am I dumb? Well, but turns out it wasn't fake. So naturally, my next question was,
What sorcery is this?
impossibly perfect shaped rocks. The cubes are called pyrite, and despite looking like a metal, it's actually a crystal. And in a specific mine in Spain, you can literally pull these perfect shiny cubes right out of the cave wall. Okay, but how did these form in the first place? Well, if you zoom in, you'll see that pyrite is made of the elements iron and sulfur. Initially, they float around as ions in hot water underground, and as the fluid cools, opposite charges attract and they begin to crystallize. When forming crystals, atoms like to arrange themselves in a lattice, which is a repeating arrangement that keeps the crystal stable. The simplest repeating pattern in a lattice is called the unit cell, and it just so happens that the unit cell for pyrite is a perfect cube. But it looks really complicated like this, so let's just stuff it all into a box and think of it as a cube-shaped Lego brick. In the right environmental conditions, these Lego bricks build up evenly, layer by layer, resulting in a fake-looking cube. And sometimes you can even get multiple pyrite cubes growing in each other, leading to all sorts of cool designs. But a cubic unit cell doesn't necessarily mean you'll get a cubic crystal, like in the case of garnet, where different environmental conditions make it form perfect dodecahedrons instead. And cubic crystals aren't even rare in nature, like if you look really closely, table salt is cubic. Anyways, I'm convinced that you're real now. Wait a minute. If this crazy looking rock was right under my nose the whole time, what else are you hiding under there? Musical rocks. In some special areas of the world, there are fields of rocks that can sing. They're called ringing rocks, and when you strike them with a hammer, they ring out like a bell. Using these, ancient civilizations would make an instrument called a lithophone, which is basically a rock xylophone. But there's some debate about why these rocks actually ring. One informal study from the 1960s cut up both a ringing rock and a normie rock, and after measuring the initial dimensions, they waited a bit and then measured them again. The normie rock, well, stayed normie. There was no change in size, but the ringing rock actually expanded a little, indicating that there were some internal stresses that were released after the rock was cut. And the theory is that these internal stresses are what causes the rocks to ring. It's also been found that rocks with higher internal stresses ring at higher frequencies. So maybe if you want a higher note, you need to stress out the rock more. But unfortunately, people kinda suck, and most of the smaller ringing rocks from these rare areas have been stolen. And it gets even worse. There's only boulder-sized ringing rocks left. But this hasn't stopped people from taking chunks of them home as souvenirs. The annoying part is, breaking these rocks releases the stresses inside them, meaning they lose their musical ability permanently. You gotta take care of the earth, people. Like, treat it nicely. What? Glowing rocks. Under visible light, some rocks appear normal, but under ultraviolet light, they glow. How cool is that? Glowing rocks have special atoms in them called activators, and when UV light shines on one, the energy excites an electron, causing it to jump to a higher energy level temporarily. But after a fraction of a second, the electron loses its energy and falls back down to its original energy level. As it does, it releases the extra energy as a photon of visible light. And because there's millions and billions of these activator atoms all releasing photons at the exact same time, your eyeball perceives this as a glowing rock. This property is called fluorescence, and I have a really hard time spelling the last half of that word. The color of the glow depends on the chemical element of the activator atom. For example, manganese activators cause red glows like in calcite, uranium activators cause green glows like in autunite, and molybdenum activators cause blue glows like in scheelite. But fluorescent rocks lose their glow when the UV light is turned off. But there are some rocks that keep glowing without it. The property is called phosphorescence, and it works in a similar way to fluorescence, but instead of the excited electron falling back down quickly, it gets stuck at the higher level. This is due to something called a forbidden transition, which sounds quite ominous, but basically due to quantum rules, the electron holds on to that extra energy longer and releases it slowly over time. So you get a sustained, continual glow until the electron eventually drops down to its original energy level. This is what's used in glow-in-the-dark stickers, and it also explains why they eventually died over time. But did you know that you could recharge them if you use a blacklight torch? And it doesn't stop here. Glowing rock speed round. Thermoluminescence causes rocks to glow when you heat them up. Although most objects will eventually glow if you heat them up enough. Triboluminescence causes rocks to produce light when they're scratched or crushed, like sugar cubes, which produce a small flash of blue light when you smash them. Electroluminescence causes rocks to glow when you electrocute them. And radioluminescence causes rocks to glow when they're bombarded by radioactive decay. So rocks can form perfect cool shapes, they can sing, they can glow. What else can they do? Magnetic rocks. I like to put myself in the shoes of early humans coming across crazy phenomena in the world. Like, what would it be like to see lightning for the first time? Or discover fire? Or find out that these mystical rocks want to do this? Witchcraft. There are stories of ancient people thinking that magnetic rocks had some sort of life force or soul, which allowed them to attract other objects. We now know it's a type of iron ore called magnetite. Usually it's just attracted to other magnets and doesn't do any of the attracting by itself. In very rare cases though, the ore is permanently magnetized and doing the attracting. Okay, so how did this random rock become a magnet naturally? Well, for a magnet to be magnetized, it needs to be exposed to a strong magnetic field. And the Earth has a magnetic field, but it's way too weak to create a strong magnet. So instead, the theory is when magnetite is just chilling, minding its own business, it gets struck by lightning. The strong magnetic fields of the lightning strike permanently magnetize the iron ore, creating something called a lodestone. This also explains why lodestones are quite rare and only occur near the surface. This lightning theory was also supported by a NASA dude's experiments, where he shocked some magnetite in a lab and artificially created a lodestone. At this point, I'm like, what can't rocks do? Like, next you're gonna tell me that some rocks are alive or something. Why have you gone silent? living rocks. Maybe. Around a small town in Romania called Castesti are a bunch of lumpy-looking rocks called trovents. They might look innocent and unassuming, but if you've lived in this town for long enough, you'd know that there's something fishy about them. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Some are tiny, some weigh several tons, and some are super duper lumpy. In Romanian, the word trovent translates to growing stone, and they've been recorded to increase in size, especially after it rains. And their strange behavior has become a part of local myths, with them being thought of as dragon eggs. But when scientists cut one sample open, they didn't discover a dragon, but actually a bunch of ring layers instead, sort of like the growth rings of a tree. The theory is that because trovents are porous, meaning they have a lot of tiny holes inside them, they're able to absorb minerals from the rain. Over time, these minerals build up inside, creating outward pressure, forcing the rock to expand. This process is very, very slow, and the rocks are estimated to grow a whopping 4 centimeters every 1,000 years. So basically, every time it rains, it's sort of like the trovent's feeding time. But it doesn't end there. Sometimes the trovents grow a bulb, and with enough time, it can break off from the parent rock, creating a mini baby trovent. And then the baby trovent can grow too. So if you want a pet rock, a trovent is your best pick. Wait, actually no, leave them in Romania. Back, no touching! I didn't really know much about rocks before this, but I had a lot of fun learning about these little goobers.
Did you know that this is the biggest object humans have ever sent into space? It may not look like it, but this is actually a 20-kilometer long piece of wire. That's as tall as the Empire State Building. Well, 45 of them. But what's he doing there? It must be the universe's longest string telephone. Hello? Hello?
Prepare for invasion, Earth.
Well, that's not good. To actually understand what it's for, we need to look at Faraday's law of induction. If I move this loop of wire through this magnetic field, a small current is produced. You can increase the power generated by using more wire and moving it faster. In fact, stick a propeller on the end and now you have yourself a wind turbine. This concept made the big brains at NASA go, you know how, the Earth is, basically a giant magnet? Yeah, bro, totally. What if we use, a super long wire, bro?
Huh?
So $400 million later, this is the plan they came up with. Earth has big magnetic field, so we send spaceship with big wire. But Earth's magnetic field very weak, so we send even bigger wire. Then we move spaceship super fast to generate power. Then we rule the galaxy. The system was called the TSS-1, or Tethered Satellite System. 1. It had a base satellite, a sub-satellite, and a 20-kilometer long conductive tether connecting them both, acting as the wire. Now, you may have noticed something wrong here. In our original example, we used a loop of wire because electricity needs a closed loop to flow, and this tether is not a loop. But electricity is really just the flow of electrons, and turns out there's a layer of the Earth's atmosphere called the ionosphere, which has a bunch of free electrons just floating around. So, using a fancy electron collector and emitter, NASA designed a system to create electron flow using the ionosphere, completing the loop. In 1992, TSS-1 was launched aboard Space Shuttle Atlantis. It successfully reached the ionosphere, and it was finally time to unfurl the 20-kilometer long tether. Houston, we have a problem. This screw isn't gonna cut it. Okay, swap him out then. Hey, we should test everything again to make sure it works, right? Nah, should be good. It was not good. That beefy screw caused the tether reel to jam up at a whopping 260 meters, pretty much 1% of its maximum length. Moral of the story, always test and retest after making any design changes. Quite the expensive lesson to learn, but surely they'll get it next time, right? Right! Ooh, we made it past 260 meters this time! And the tether successfully deployed to its full length of 20 kilometers.
Houston, we have a problem.
It was so close, but when the tether reached 19.7 kilometers, a small defect in the insulation near the bottom led to a large arc that melted it. And that's how we ended up here, a giant space noodle floating in the sky. It was sighted all over the world, like in Australia, in Hawaii, in southern USA. And a few weeks later, it re-entered the atmosphere, cooking the space noodle once and for all. But the big question is, did the experiment work though? Well, NASA managed to collect some data, and the tether generated almost 3.5 kilowatts of electrical power, enough to run 3 toasters at once. Okay, that doesn't seem like much, but for context, most small satellites only need 1 toaster amount of power. But despite this, the tethered satellite system missions were abandoned, and the results weren't publicized. Well, apart from being roasted by the media. I guess it is kind of embarrassing to have your mistake plastered in the sky for the whole world to see, but I really hope they try again, because I imagine a night sky in the future where space noodles hang from every spaceship and satellite. Hashtag bring back space noodles.
Please, I haven't seen the sun in years.
Hello, bug-sized man. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be eaten by a carnivorous plant? No? Well, let's find out. Number 5, pitcher plants.
Let me out! Let me out!
The pitcher plant gets its name from its pitcher-shaped leaves, and it uses these as deadly traps. Picture this. First, your insect brain is lured in by the sweet scent of nectar. And once you reach the top, you start slurping to your heart's content. But what you don't realize is the surface you're standing on has a waxy coating, making it extremely slippery. You take one step too close to the edge, and you've fallen into the pitcher plant's digestive fluids. The walls are covered in wax too, making it impossible to climb out, and you slowly realize that there's no escape. As your arms grow tired, you begin to drown, and the plant starts digesting you alive.
Why must you do this, pitcher plant?
Well, that's a great question. Pitcher plants and most other carnivorous plant species live in environments that provide insufficient nutrients, so they've adapted to get the essentials like nitrogen, phosphorus, and magnesium from your flesh instead.
No, please.
Their diet mostly consists of bugs, but some pitchers are large enough to eat frogs and rats too. Subscribe, dude. They come in so many different shapes and sizes, like this one. Remind you of something? Yep, that's a toilet. The lid secretes an abundance of nectar that attracts small mammals like the tree shrew. And while it eats the nectar, the toilet bowl catches any post-lunch dumps. That's right, this pitcher plant eats poop. A wholesome symbiotic relationship. My favorite pitcher plant species has got to be the cobra lily, and this is how it would eat you. You're lured in by the scent of nectar again, this time coming from a leaf shaped like the forked tongue of a cobra. The concentration of nectar increases as you move further up, the plant's sneaky invitation to get you to climb inside, and eventually you end up inside a beautiful dome with light pouring in through many holes. Having had your fill of nectar, you decide to leave, and there's so many exits to choose from. How convenient. Oh. But it's not an exit, it's a window. You try another one. Oh. Strange. Oh well, you'll just leave the way you came in. But wait, which one was the entrance? Confusion sets in as all the exits you see turn out to be fakes. You don't notice, but this whole time you've been moving deeper and deeper inside the plant. Until... Now, unlike other pitcher plants, the cobra lily doesn't digest you with enzymes. Instead, gross midge larvae and bacteria start eating you alive, breaking you down into nutrient soup for the cobra lily to slurp up. Now, if you don't want to be eaten by my pet plant, you should boop the like button.
It really helps me out a lot.
Pitcher plants are just the first on this list, and there's 4 more leafy assassins to go. Number 4, bladderwort. Bladderworts grow in freshwater and wet soil environments, and on the surface they have cute little flowers. But underneath is where the cold-blooded murder happens. One nice sunny day you're swimming along living your best life, and then in the blink of an eye, you're suffocating in total darkness. You've been caught in the bladderwort's trap. Attached to the plant's underwater stems are these structures called bladders, but instead of holding pee, they act as trapdoors. Oh god. Come on, dude. First, water is expelled, creating negative pressure inside, and the trap is set. When you came swimming along, you brushed past one of the bladder's trigger hairs, breaking the trapdoor seal. This created a vacuum, sucking you in within milliseconds. The bladderwort's diet consists of nematodes, fish fry, and mosquito larvae, but it can eat larger things like tadpoles too. It does this by digesting you in stages. First it dissolves your head into mush, then your body, then your legs, until you've been completely turned into nutrient soup. Number 3. Sticky leaf plant. Sundews are named after the glistening drops of nectar covering their long, tendril-like leaves. But despite their beauty, these drops have a deadly function. The nectar is laced with a powerful glue, and as soon as you've touched it, it's a wrap. Literally. The plant senses your struggle, so it starts constricting its tentacles inwards, bringing you into contact with as much stickiness as possible. The secretions coat your whole body, immobilizing your limbs and clogging your breathing holes, causing you to suffocate in a matter of minutes. This whole time, the sundew has been secreting digestive enzymes as well, slowly dissolving you until only a skeleton is left behind. Compared to some of the other plants though, being hugged to death actually sounds like a nice way to go. Another sticky leaf species is the butterwort, named after the buttery texture of its leaves. Works in pretty much the same way as the sundew, except its leaves are broad and flat, so there's more surface area for killing and eating. But not all carnivorous sticky leaf plants do the digesting. The rhododendron macrocephalum has a mutualistic relationship with the mirrored bug. The plant does the trapping, and the mirrored bug stabs you with its face. And then it sucks out your nutrient soup, turning it into nutrient poop for the plant to absorb. But something isn't adding up here. How does a plant that's highly adapted to catching bugs not catch this bug? It turns out that the mirrored bug has an extremely thick coating of grease, completely protecting it from the sticky clutches of the plant. Number 2. Corkscrew plants.
Oh, okay.
So one day you're rolling around in the dirt when you stumble upon a tunnel. Where does it go? Is there treasure at the end? You've just arrived at the opening to one of the corkscrew plant's many corkscrew-shaped leaves. As you travel through the spiraling tunnel, you brush past these strange pointed hairs. They're arranged in a way that makes moving into the tunnel very easy, but moving out, almost impossible. Your only option now is to go deeper into the cave. And after what feels like ages, you finally reach a nice chamber filled with digestive fluids and a slow, painful death. The corkscrew plant's diet consists of protozoans, mites, and annelids. And because of the sheer number of them hanging around in the dirt, the plant doesn't need to attract them. It just sits there and watches as the critters walk themselves into its stomach. Number 1. Snap traps. I bet you've all been waiting for this one. When you think of a carnivorous plant, the first thing that springs to your mind is the Venus flytrap. But contrary to their name, these plants don't actually eat that many flies. Their diet consists of roughly 1/3 ants, 1/3 spiders, and 1/3 miscellaneous critters. Only 5% are flying insects. 4 adaptations make the Venus flytrap an effective killer. First, the leaves' bright red color and sweet nectar smell tricks you into thinking you spotted a delicious fruit. Second are these tiny sensory hairs all over its leaves. Nothing happens if you only touch a hair once, but if you touch it twice... As each trap can only operate 7-ish times before dying, this adaptation prevents wasting a snap on something like a raindrop or a fallen leaf. Third, each trap has these long lashes, which look like menacing teeth. Venus flytraps are quite picky with their food, as starting the digestive process takes a lot of energy, so smaller, unworthy prey can escape through the gaps in the lashes.
I'm free.
but bigger prey like you are trapped inside. Fourth, to make doubly sure that it's caught a big juicy meal, the plant waits until the sensory hairs are repeatedly triggered while closed, before it finally gets ready for dinner time. The trap clamps down even tighter, interlocking its lashes and forming an airtight seal. You slowly die of suffocation, and the plant secretes digestive enzymes, dissolving you over the course of a few days. When it finally opens up, all that's left of you is a skeleton. So many exciting ways to be eaten. Now watch this one next.
Or else.
The postal system handles millions of mail pieces every day. All you need to do is put your heartfelt letter in an envelope, write the address, slap on a stamp, and dump it into this mysterious box. And it magically spawns onto your friend's doorstep. But I've always wanted to know what's really going on behind the postal system. And what better way to find out than to become the mail?
Wait, what?
Goodbye.
Let me out!
Your journey starts here. With Posty, your friendly local mail carrier. Once a day, Posty drives around in a van, collecting mail from each mailbox on their designated route. Once complete, Posty returns the mail to their regional mail sorting facility, along with all the other Posties in the area. And you end up in a giant jumbled mail mountain. Now it's time to send everything off to their delivery addresses. But where do we even start? Sorting centers in the US can receive millions of pieces of mail every day, and they're all going to different places. This one's going local, this one's going regional, and this one's going international. We could get these human monkeys to sort through them one by one, but that would take forever. So instead, we unleashed the Sortatron 3000! A highly specialized sorting robot that can sort up to 40,000 letters per hour. Oh, that's right, she's a very picky eater, and only likes eating standard-sized letters. But this mail mountain consists of all shapes and sizes, so first we need a way of filtering the mail to leave only the sizes that Sortatron likes. So we unleash the Colortron 3000! A different robot specialized at removing unwanted mail sizes before feeding it to Sortatron. Colortron's real name is the Color Facer Canceller Machine, and each of these fancy words stands for a different process that the mail pieces will go through. The first stage is the culling. And this is where Colortron gets rid of the mail that Sortatron doesn't like. There's 4 types of mail you can expect in the jumbled mail mountain. Flat but oversized mail, flat but undersized mail, flat and standard size mail, perfect for Sortatron consumption, and mail that's not really flat at all. To start, all the mail is dumped into a hopper and onto a conveyor belt. But there's a problem right away. It's all bunched up, and passing giant clumps through Colortron can cause problems. To solve this, the conveyor is slanted upward, which allows gravity to peel the tops of piles off, spreading them more evenly. And flappy smacker boys are used to break things up further. Once the mail is roughly spread out, the next step is to remove any bulky parcels with the help of a giant screw roller. The roller is positioned so that only skinny mail can slide under. Any large packages are repeatedly smacked to the side until they fall into a bin, where they're manually sorted and dispatched by actual human beings. That's bulky items taken care of. The remaining mail now tips down a waterfall chute and onto a new conveyor, but this time they're traveling vertically instead of flat. The next item to cull is undersized parcels. Colortron deals with these pesky items by dropping them into the abyss. But letters that are 3 inches or taller get safely carried over with the help of pinch conveyors. At the bottom of the abyss is a tray where the small items are collected and manually processed. Now all that's left is standard-sized mail and oversized flats. The last culling operation removes these oversized pieces with pinch conveyors again, but this time they're positioned even higher, so they only grab the big guys, yeeting them into a bin for manual processing. But if a standard-sized letter is standing tall, it can get mistaken for oversized and yeeted out as well. So there's a flappy smacky boy somewhere earlier in the process that makes sure all the mail is resting along their long edges. That's oversized flats taken care of. But even though the letters are all standard size now, they're not separated evenly, and some are even overlapping, which can hide the addresses and stamps. So to separate them, the overlapping letters are squeezed until they peel apart, and then a pick-off belt grabs the leading mail piece, flicking it forward one letter at a time. Now we're left with a perfectly spaced out stream of standard-sized mail. Congratulations! You made it through the culling stage safely. You're still alive, right? Great! Cause now you're up to the facing stage, where Colortron wants the letters facing the same direction. Each letter's orientation is found using cameras, by detecting the phosphorescent border on its stamp, which glows under UV light. At the start, Colortron wants all the stamps along the bottom edge, so any letters that are in the wrong orientation are sent to the twisting belts of death, where they get flippity-doo. Mail that's oriented correctly is diverted and merged again later. Letters with stamps in truly cursed locations sail straight into a reject stack for manual handling. You now move on to the cancelling stage, where a postmark is smacked across the stamp to show that it's been spent. Stamps equal money, so cancelling them means they can't be reused in an infinite money glitch. This stage is also when the letter's addresses are read using high-speed cameras in a process known as optical character recognition. Basically, the camera turns the image of each character into a grid of ones and zeros. 1 means black, 0 means white. The computer has a database of what it expects each character to look like in terms of ones and zeros, so it does a comparison, finds the best statistical match, and decodes the whole address that way. This can get a bit funky when people write in cursive though. If the handwriting is unreadable, the photo is beamed to a remote handling center, where a human being manually attempts to decipher the chicken scratch. Once the computer knows the letter's destination, a special fluorescent barcode is sprayed onto it with this information, now serving as the letter's new identity tag. From here on, this barcode is the only thing the machines care about. Finally, the letters get flipped again. So now the stamps are all at the top and get sent to 2 different bins depending on their orientation, conveniently ending up facing the same way in the end. Another handy thing Colortron does is send a local and outgoing mail to separate bins. So mail staying inside white country gets sent to these 2 bins, whereas mail going to all the other countries gets sent to these 2 bins. Now all the mail has been fully processed and is perfect for Sorgatron consumption. Thanks Colortron for all your help. Getting back to our original problem, how do we send all this jumbled mail in the right direction? It's going to different places all across the world, and if you gave it to Posty like this, they'd need a teleporter to deliver everything on time. That's where Sorgatron comes in. Sorgatron's job is taking this jumbled stack of mail that's heading in all different directions and separating them into different bins according to their destination addresses. So first we sort by zip codes. Blue countries' zip codes start with 1, green countries with 2, and yellow countries with 3. To start this process, the mail clerk takes the stack of letters and feeds it to Sorgatron. She gobbles them up one by one, scanning the fluorescent barcode to determine which bin the letters belong to. Oh, this one's blue mail, towards the blue bin you go. The letters travel sandwiched in between 2 high-speed belts, and in front of each bin is a special infrared light barrier with a transmitter on one side and a receiver on the other. When a letter flows past the bin, it breaks the light barrier, so Sorgatron knows exactly when it needs to activate its deflector to smack the letter into the correct bin. And in reality, all of this happens really fast, like this fast. Once the machine has finished its perfect pile pooping, we're left with 3 stacks of mail, each separated by region. You're then taken to the loading docks and off you go! All across the world. Of course, there's only 3 regions in this example, but Earth has about 200 countries and many more states, cities, and towns. So you can imagine how big Sorgatrons can actually get. In fact, mail centers can have up to 15 Sorgatrons or more working simultaneously. And hey, look at that! You've just arrived at Blue Regional Mail Center, and guess who's waiting for you? Another Sorgatron! Now we need to sort the letters into separate piles for each zip code. And then within a zip code, we do another sort to separate them into piles for each postie. You get a pile, and you get a pile, but there's still a problem here. The pile is in a completely random order. So when Posty arrives at a letterbox, they'll have to spend a lot of time searching for the right letter. Wouldn't it be nice if the stack was in Posty's exact door-to-door delivery order? They could just pick each letter off the top of the pile. Let's think about this problem for a second. Let's say in this zip code, we have 3 friendly neighborhood posties, and they're each assigned a delivery route. Street A, Street B, and Street C. For plot reasons, each street has exactly 10 houses, and every single house has a letter to be delivered to them. So right now, the mail clerk back at the sorting facility has a jumbled stack of 30 letters. But in the end, we want one bin for each street, filled with letters perfectly in order, houses 1 to 10. So let's see how Sortatron goes with our regular sorting method. And, the first address is letter 10 for Street B. But we can't put it into the bin yet because letter 1 needs to go in first. Okay, so let's just hold on to that one for now. Next is letter 7 for Street A. Alright, I guess we'll hold on to that one too. Oh look! Now it's letter 1 for Street B. Into the bin you go. And the next one is letter 7, Street C. Great. You can see how inefficient this is. Now imagine if you had 100 houses per street. To solve this, we need a different sorting program instead. Let's restart our example. The new program requires 2 sorting passes. The first pass groups all the letters by delivery sequence order, with 1 bin allocated by each number in the sequence. The first letter in our stack was going to house 10 on Street B, so it goes to the bin for all the 10s, as it's the 10th number in the sequence. The next letter was for house 7, Street A, so it goes into the 7s bin. House 1, Street B, into the 1s bin, and house 7, Street C, into the 7s bin again, and so on and so forth. It might seem a bit strange at first, mixing up mail from all different streets together, but it'll make sense in a second. So we now have 10 bins containing 3 letters each, and the mail clerk collects the bins all in order. 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s, and refeeds them together into Sortatron for a second pass. Since the first pass did all the hard work, the incoming stack has the letters in delivery sequence order already. So all Sortatron needs to do now is sort each letter into its respective street. The 1s stack first, then the 2s, the 3s, and so on. At the end, you're left with 3 neat piles, 1 for each street, and perfectly sorted into all our posties' door-to-door delivery orders. You can actually use this method for unlimited houses, as long as you have enough bins. Great work, Sortatron 3000! And 4000, and 5000, and 6000, and finally, all the nicely ordered piles are dispatched to local mail distribution centers. And when you get there, guess who's waiting for you? Another sort! Nah, it's just all the posties. The posties should in theory just be able to chuck the mail stacks into their bag and then whee! But machines and humans can mess up the ordering sometimes. Even the best doggo can make mistakes. So our diligent postie might need to do one final check, just to make sure that everything is correct. And then it's whee! Whee! And that's it! You've officially survived the postal system and made it safely to your destination. Into the shredder you go. Hello again, bug-sized man! Have you ever wondered what it's like to fight the deadliest beetles in the world?
No?
Well, let's find out. Challenger 1. Rhinoceros beetles. The Hercules beetle is the longest beetle in the world, growing up to 7 inches thanks to their massive horns. First, they intimidate their rivals and predators by making a hissing noise. But there's no way that's working on you, right? Oh, I guess I was wrong. Fleeing is a great choice though. The Hercules beetle is actually quite slow on land, as its giant horn makes it difficult to move around. But I forgot to mention he can fly. A bit clumsily, though. Now you would think that a magnificent horn like this would do a great job at the old stabby, but his horn is actually made of two parts, the cephalic horn and the thoracic horn. They're lined with hair and spines, and when he moves his head up, it creates a secure pinch grip. So it's actually used to grab you, hoist you into the air, and suplex you into submission. The beetle then approaches, ready for a snack after all that hard work. Here you go, boy. You did a great job. Turns out he's not carnivorous. He's just a peaceful beetle who eats fruit and sap, and occasionally beats up other beetles on the side. In front of the ladies, of course. Hercules beetles aren't the only horned beetles that exist. There's elephant beetles, Japanese rhino beetles, atlas beetles, and many, many more. Into the collection you go. Before we dive into the 10 other unique beetles on this list, let's learn some beetle lore first. Did you know that the Hercules beetle started off as a slimy grub? A beetle's life cycle has 4 main stages. First, all beetles start off as an egg, which are usually laid near a suitable food source. Second, when the egg hatches, a larva emerges and gets to snacking right away. And not all of them behave the same. The Hercules beetle larva feeds on rotting wood and leaves, but some other larvae are vicious carnivorous predators. But we'll get to them later. The main goal of the larva is to get as fat as possible, to store enough nutrients and energy for the third stage in the cycle, the pupa stage. The fat grubber burrows into the soil to form a pupal chamber, where it breaks down and completely reorganizes its body, developing structures like stronger legs, wings, and a harder exoskeleton. And in the fourth and final stage, the fully formed adult beetle breaks out of its pupal case. Challenger 2. Tiger beetles. This is the tiger beetle, the fastest running insect in the world. It can reach speeds of up to 5.6 miles per hour, which is about 125 times its body length per second. That's the equivalent of a human running 700 miles per hour, basically the speed of a jet. It's also one of the most aggressive beetles, equipped with curved serrated blades for mandibles that are quite large relative to their head size. But why all this fancy weaponry, you may ask? Well, it's to dismember you limb from limb, of course. Unlike the Hercules beetle, this guy's carnivorous. Oh, I think he saw you.
Huh?
Well, unfortunately, it looks like you might have a chance of survival. Turns out the tiger beetle moves too fast for its own brain. There's not enough time to process visual inputs, so they temporarily go blind mid-sprint. Oh, he's back now. Oh, we lost him again. Apart from their visual processing speeds, they're terrible with sharp turns. Looks like you've gotten away. Just kidding. Say hello to the tiger beetle larva, and they're just as violent as the adults. Their tactic is to burrow into the ground and wait patiently, and when prey like you stumbles along, they lurch out with lightning speed and grab you with their powerful pincers, pulling you inside. The larva has a hump with curved hooks that allows it to anchor itself to the tunnel, so there's no way for you to struggle out once it's latched on, and all the while it's using its mandibles to dismember you and eat you alive. Challenger 3. Toxic beetles. Next up, we have the second coolest beetle on this list, the bombardier beetle. And inside its juicy booty is a toxic chemical weapons factory.
What?
There are 2 reservoirs inside the beetle's abdomen, one filled with hydroquinone and the other with hydrogen peroxide. When threatened, the beetle squeezes these reservoirs, mixing the chemicals together in a chamber with a bunch of enzymes. The result is a violent exothermic reaction that heats up to the boiling point of water and builds up a lot of pressure too. The beetle then releases this as a hot, noxious spray that can severely wound or even kill enemies. But you might be wondering, why doesn't this explosive beetle butt chemistry make him go? Well, a one-way valve prevents the pressure from going back into the beetle, ensuring that it can only leave through one exit, the bombardier beetle's butt turret. The weapon is more like a Gatling gun than a flamethrower, as each spray is made up of a series of many rapid pulses per second. This helps the beetle avoid overheating and damaging itself, and unfortunately for you, it stores enough chemicals to repeat this pulsing spray for up to 20 times in a single fight. The beetle's butt turret also has a 270-degree range of motion, meaning it can protect itself from most angles. And if the boiling temperature wasn't unfair enough, one of the products of the reaction is benzoquinone, which is an irritant with a strong stinky smell. So now you're in physical pain due to the burns and emotional pain because nobody wants to be around you. Challenger 4. Diving beetles. The great diving beetle lives in freshwater ponds and lakes, and they've developed a taste for seafood. Oh, come on, man! They can stay underwater for over 30 minutes using a bubble of air they've trapped under their wing covers as a scuba tank. And once it's depleted, they stick their butt out of the water to replenish it. The beetles are quite agile, thanks to their paddle-like hind legs, which are lined with long hairs to generate more thrust underwater. They use this speed to chase down prey like small fish and tadpoles. Then with their strong forelimbs and mandibles, they grab and tear them apart, all while spewing digestive juices. Ooh, you got him! Ew, that's smelly. As a defense mechanism, the beetle secretes foul-smelling chemicals. This could cause larger fish to puke them out, or even paralyze them. You've escaped this time. But you're not safe yet, because diving beetle larvae are even more of a menace. These guys are extremely aggressive hunters, capable of overpowering prey much larger than them, even other adult diving beetles. Once they've pierced their prey, digestive juices are injected through a tube in the mandible, and the liquefied nutrient soup is slapped up. This vicious behavior grants them the very cool nickname of water tiger. Challenger 5. Indestructible beetles. This is the diabolical ironclad beetle. Yep, that's its actual name. Ironclad because it's covered in almost indestructible armor, and diabolical because the guy who named it must have stubbed his toe on one. This is diabolical! The beetle can take a crushing force of 39,000 times its own body weight. That's like you being stepped on by 500 African elephants. And yes, they can survive being run over by a car. The diabolical ironclad beetle has sacrificed flight, and instead, its wing covers are permanently fused together to form an impenetrable exoskeleton. It's made up of multiple layers of tough chitin, interlocked in a jigsaw-like pattern that allows them to flex and absorb high impacts efficiently. Ironclad beetles can also live up to 8 years, which is way longer than the typical lifespan of most beetles. They've basically dumped all of their stat points into defense and HP, the ultimate tank build. So I guess you're not winning this fight. But you're in luck, because this guy ain't winning either. Despite its evil-sounding name, the diabolical ironclad beetle is actually quite docile, and it plays dead whenever it gets threatened. Why don't we call it a draw for now? Although, it's probably playing dead right now for another reason. If you're enjoying the video so far, it would help me a lot if you could hit the like button. Thank you, goodbye. Did you do it yet? Challenger 6. Dung beetles. You might think that dung beetles are just stinky little bugs covered in poop all day. And you'd be right, but don't underestimate them, because they're actually one of the strongest creatures relative to their size, being able to pull 1,141 times their own body weight. That's like you being able to pull a fully loaded Boeing 737 by yourself. Dung beetles have a super sensitive sense of smell, which is great for finding new piles of poop. Their whole world revolves around it. They eat poop, live in poop, and raise their stinky little larva babies in poop. Different species show different behaviors. Rollers roll the dung ball to a safe spot to bury it. Tunnelers burrow into the dung piles and live in the tunnels underneath, and dwellers literally just live in the dung pile. Once a roller has captured a ball, they can't be stopped. Literally, the beetle rolls its ball in a straight line no matter the obstacles. If it gets knocked off course, it gets up on its little poop perch and uses the sun, the moon, or light from the Milky Way galaxy to reorient itself. Dung beetles usually aren't very aggressive, but they get serious once you threaten to steal their poop ball. It's like a game of King of the Hill, where the beetle stands on its ball and defends it against the other attackers. Unfortunately, the dung beetle's love of poop is also their greatest weakness. Their predator, the burrowing owl, purposely collects poop from other animals and places it around their burrows as bait. This attracts them for an all-you-can-eat beetle buffet. Challenger 7. giant beetles. The Titan beetle is the biggest beetle in the world. Hey, don't look at that guy. His horn doesn't count. Anyways, Titan beetles can grow up to 6.5 inches long, and their large mandibles produce enough force to snap a pencil in half. Of course, they would have no problem cutting into human flesh too. But what do these guys eat to get this big? Well, actually, nothing. Adult Titan beetles don't eat. In fact, they don't even have digestive enzymes. It's speculated that as larvae, they store enough energy to last their entire adult stage of life. And I say speculate because Titan beetle larvae have never been found in the wild, and none have been bred in captivity either. We don't even know what they look like. Adult Titan beetles only live for a few weeks before they burn through all their energy supplies. So to beat these guys in a fight, all you have to do is evade them until they eventually flop over and die. I won! I won! There's actually another contender for biggest beetle if you go by sheer weight. The Goliath beetle. They come in at a whopping 50 grams, and the larva is even chunkier, weighing in at 100 grams. Luckily, both of these guys aren't carnivorous, so as long as you're not trying to steal their food or their mates, they're pretty docile, and you can escape without a fight. Can't say the same about the next one though. Challenger 8. Epomus beetles.
Huh?
To the filthy casual, the Epomus beetle might look like any other regular beetle, but you should know better by now. Actually, I'll let you take a break for this one.
Thank you, Doggo.
I have another victim in mind. You see, throughout beetle history, there's been one slimy predator that has terrorized every bug in existence. A relentless, bottomless bug vacuum. The
Frog.
But now, we're about to see the predator become prey. This tale of revenge begins as a tiny larva. In the presence of a frog, the Epomus larva acts all weak and helpless, wiggling its antenna around pathetically. Oh no, don't eat me! The amphibian is baited into thinking it's an easy meal, and it lets its guard down and lunges forward. And that's the last mistake this frog will ever make. The larva dodges and immediately counterattacks by sinking its creepy double-hooked mandibles deep into the frog's slimy flesh. There's no chance for the frog to struggle free as the larva slowly slurps up its body fluids, eating it completely. Even if the frog managed to swallow the larva, it's been known to latch on from the inside, usually causing it to be violently regurgitated, and free to attack the frog again. Once the larva transforms into an adult, it doesn't even bother with the bait and switch playstyle anymore. Instead, it relentlessly hunts the frog down and latches onto its back. And then, using its mandibles like scissors, it cuts through the muscles and tendons of the hind legs, disabling the frog's ability to jump and escape. Then, it can take its sweet leisurely time to eat the frog alive. In my opinion, this is the coolest beetle on the list. But get back in there. There's more deadly beetles to come. Challenger 9. Stag beetles. Stag beetles are most notable for their giant pinchy mandibles, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. The largest of them is the giraffe stag beetle, with long serrated mandibles that are quite scary. When challenged, the first thing a stag beetle does is intimidate its opponent by rearing up onto its forelegs and spreading its jaws. If the opponent doesn't back down, then the fight begins. I think you can probably guess what's gonna happen next though.
Watch out, watch out, watch out!
Just like Hercules beetles, stag beetles aren't carnivorous, so it just leaves you alone after it's broken your back. But it must be quite hard to get to food when you're blocked by these things all the time. Another stag beetle species known as Darwin's beetle is famous for their treetop battles during mating season. While fighting for a mate, they use their mandibles to hook onto their opponent's wing covers for leverage to yeet them off the tree. Ow! In reality though, the stag beetle's jaws look a lot worse than they actually are. They can only pinch and not bite, so they're not actually that painful. Challenger 10. Imposter beetles. The antness beetle looks kinda cute with its fluffy antenna and chunky build, but don't be fooled, they're the most devious critters on this list. It all starts when the antness beetle comes across a worker ant. Oh, come on. The beetle secretes pheromones, which the ants go crazy for. And at the same time, they also use an acoustic mechanism to imitate the sounds of a queen ant. It smells like an ant, it sounds like an ant, but it sure doesn't look like an ant. Must be an ant. So the beetle waltzes right into the ant nest, where it's treated like royalty. It gets a free spa day as it receives plenty of grooming from the worker ants. It gets free babysitters as the ants feed and care for all the eggs the beetle lays, and it also gets plenty of free meals, as the beetle repays all the ants' kindness by eating them instead.
Hey man, somebody keeps eating all our eggs. Who do you think it is?
I don't know. I guess there is one thing the ants get out of this deal though. If a predator or ants from another colony try to invade, the beetle whips out its explosive butt spray to defend the nest. Similar to the bombardier beetle. Challenger 11. Blister beetles. Our final challenger. Why don't you give him a pat? He won't bite.
Oh, okay then.
Looks like you didn't take Nature 101. If it's got bright spots, don't touch it. Blister beetles produce a toxic chemical in their bug blood called cantharidin, which causes painful welts and blisters to form all over your skin upon contact. Many species are aposematic, meaning they have bright colors on them to deter predators. Nice of them to warn you, but not all of them though. Blisters form after an hour or so, and in most cases heal in about a week. But if you decide to crush the beetles up into a powder and eat them that way instead, you'd feel severe stomach pain and nausea, followed by blisters in your mouth and throat. Depending on how many you ate, in a few hours you might have kidney damage and you could even die from organ failure. How did people find this out? Well, it's said that the ancient Romans and Greeks thought it was an aphrodisiac, because apparently being on the brink of organ failure felt like arousal to them. In the modern world, however, blister beetles are huge pests. They eat the leaves off of crops like potatoes and tomatoes, and even worse, they can get into the food source of livestock, like hay for horses. Who do you think would win? One horse or a couple of stinky beetles? Well, ingesting just 4 grams of blister beetles can actually be fatal for the horse. I guess technically there was no winner in that fight though. Apart from the chemical defenses, blister beetles don't have much going for them. They've got small mandibles that aren't very good at biting, and their exoskeleton is pretty weak. Maybe this is a fight you can actually win.
Really?
Maybe not. The collection's finally complete. Now, I know what you're all thinking. What kind of beetle are you, Doggo? Well, how did you know? Antarctica is the loneliest place on Earth. But did you know it turns normal people into crazy people? The scientific reason behind this is small brain. No, really. The isolation shrinks your hippocampus, which leads to poor decision-making, violence, and some of the most peculiar cases of crime. Case 1. Arson at Almirante Brown Station. Antarctica sure is cold. Good thing we have this burning research station here to warm us up. So, how did this happen? Well, this is the station doctor, and his job was making sure that the scientists here didn't go crazy in the harsh Antarctic environment. The irony was, he was starting to go crazy too. But thankfully, the doctor was only here for the summer, and the end of his stay was right around the corner. Or so he thought, because he was then ordered to stay for the winter as well. Now, what would you do in this situation? Just suck it up? Or maybe burn everything down instead?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
In a place made entirely of water, you might think that fires aren't really a big deal, but you'd be wrong. 1. Antarctica is the windiest continent on Earth, so fires spread really quickly. 2. There's no liquid water available to fight the fire, it's all frozen. And 3. If it destroys your radio and emergency supplies, you're stranded, completely cut off from the outside world. But the doctor was so desperate to leave that he didn't care, and luckily his plan worked. A supply ship noticed the fire and turned back to rescue them, and then dumped them at another station nearby. Surprisingly, there were no charges pressed against him. Instead, the station was rebuilt, and winter stays were banned to avoid incidents like this again. Now in the summer, it's a popular sledding location for tourists and penguins. Case Case 2. Stabbing at the Russian research station. Well, here's our victim. His name's Oleg. He appears to have some extra holes in him, but he's somehow still alive. Hey, how did this happen, huh? Well, it all started with Oleg's special talent for driving his co-workers up the wall, especially his colleague Russian scientist Sergei Savitsky. Savitsky loved to read books, which was one of the few entertaining things to do on this frozen wasteland. So after a long day, he was looking forward to getting back into that mystery book he'd been reading. But just as he was getting to the juicy part, Oleg would always come along and spoil it. The butler did it. Again and again, every book ruined by Oleg. Until... And that's how we ended up here, right, Oleg? Maybe you should have seen that coming. Speaking of which, where is Savitsky? Savitsky actually turned himself in after he was overcome with regret from his actions. I mean, what was he gonna do instead?
Why are you running?
Dude, there's literally nowhere to go.
So they locked him in the church for a week, until he was flown back to Russia to face justice. But he received no punishment for his crimes. In fact, Oleg actually forgave him after he made a full recovery in hospital. It turns out Savitsky was just a normal man, who never thought he would try to kill someone. A+ for effort though, but it goes to show that in Antarctica, anyone can be pushed over the edge. Maybe you do the same. I know I would. Case 3. A fall at Stonington Island. You know that feeling when you just want to push someone off a cliff? No? Just me? Hey, have you liked the video yet? Well, this incident unfolds on the rocky frozen cliffs of Stonington Island, where two men are conducting research on birds' nests. One of them is young Dr. McLean on his first ever Antarctic expedition, and the other is Finron, the experienced captain. He's been on multiple expeditions and knows the dangers of being careless, so he's super strict with his men to the point where people describe him as a dictator. And he's created many enemies because of this, including McLean himself. For months, McLean had been suffocating under Ron's leadership. He just wanted to come here and look at some penguins, but no penguins. They eventually reach the top and Ron begins his research. But at that moment, a dangerous thought pops into McLean's head. What if he just pushed him off the edge? See, I knew I wasn't alone. It would be so easy to say that it was an accident, that Finron had just slipped, and that was that. And then finally, Dr. McLean could enjoy Antarctica. In the end, McLean's humanity won, and the two men returned from their task safely. Finron went on to leave a lasting legacy with all his expeditions, and McLean went back to a normal private doctor life in Alaska, later admitting that he'd never come so close to killing someone in his life. Case 4. Assault at McMurdo Station. McMurdo is a great name for a place to commit murder. Anyway, seems like something's cooking in the kitchen. Ooh, victims! Looks like the weapon of choice was a hammer, and you guys have been hit with the claw end. This side blunt trauma, this side stabby stabby. Let's rewind a little. Two cooks get into a fight. Over what? Nobody knows. But even the small disagreements spiral out of control in Antarctica. One cook grabs a hammer and blindly starts swinging. A third cook jumps in to break it up, and now there's two cooked cooks. Next, the special deputy comes in, and his role is to enforce the law at the station. But he wasn't allowed to carry any weapons. He only had this handbook.
Let's see here. Diffuse the situation through verbal discourse. Hey, please stop. Well, I guess that's my job done.
That's how unprepared the station was for handling situations like this. It really do be just a bunch of scientists everywhere. Eventually, the special deputy did manage to deal with the attacker and placed them in a hut under 24/7 observation. Typically, suspects are sent back to their home countries for trial, but this case was unique. It was the first time that federal law enforcement was sent to Antarctica instead. They looked over the evidence and arrested the perpetrator. He was taken to Hawaii where he faced 4 counts of assault, but just like everyone else, he was pronounced not guilty due to the stressful conditions in Antarctica. Thankfully, the 2 victims fully recovered, and learning from that experience, the US Antarctic program upgraded their playbook. Case 5. Corruption at King Sejong Station. In October of 2009, it was reported that an attack had occurred at King Sejong Station, but there were conflicting reports as to what actually happened. This is the head chef, the alleged victim. He says that he was violently assaulted by the general manager. This is the station leader. He says that the assault never actually happened, and it was all just verbal threats. Even the doctor who tended to the head chef says the injuries were just minor. So who's telling the truth? Well, let's see what the others think about the head chef.
He sucks. His food stinks. Get him out of here.
I like him. I mean, I'd like him to die. Yeah. And what do you think about our suspected attacker?
I respect him. He's my big bro.
He's always looking out for us.
He's the best. The greatest. I hate him.
I mean, I hate how nice he is.
Yeah.
I see. I think I need more evidence, though. Where's the CCTV footage?
Whoops, I deleted all of it. My bad.
Hey, what are you doing over there? You took a recording of the CCTV footage yourself? Alright, let's have a look. Yeah, get him! Yeah, get him! Oh, get him! Turns out everyone hated the head chef, and they were trying to cover up the crime the entire time. But clearly they all knew about it, because when the chef managed to escape, the general manager literally broadcast this message to the entire station.
If you don't come here in the next 30 minutes, I will kill you!
So let's think about the options you've given him for a moment. Stay away from the scary violent man and die, or go towards the scary violent man and die. That's a tough one. This station actually had a history of violence and cover-ups over the years, but everyone had just gotten used to it. They even signed a petition asking for leniency towards the general manager. Could this be a case of an entire station being affected by entoptic small brain syndrome? The head chef certainly thought so, which is why he shared his footage with the public in the first place. But in the end, both the chef and the attacker were fired. The station leader received a warning for trying to cover it up, and that's about it. A typical resolution to entoptic criminal activity. Everyone goes home scot-free. So, what was the lesson we learned from all these cases? Repeat after me. Violence in Antarctica is okay.